As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
There's no crying in baseball!
I ate his liver with some fava beans. A nice Chianti.
That was totally wicked!
If I can change, and you can change, everybody can change!
And welcome to another episode of Your Next Favorite Movie. I'm your host, Josh G. And today, I am joined by one of the members of the Film Effect podcast. Please welcome Justin back to the show.
Hey, Josh, what's going on, man?
Oh, it's pretty good over here. How about yourself?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So I'm happy to be doing this right now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So why don't you take a minute and tell everybody what the Film Effect is all about in case they didn't tune into your last episode.
Or couldn't hear it because of the crappy sound. So hopefully got a mic this time. Hopefully that won't be a problem. So the Film Effect, we do a couple things. We do deep dive episodes where we focus on one movie, but we'll do a top 5 at the beginning of the show. So on any given episode, you're hearing us talk about more than one movie. You're hearing us talk about a bunch of different movies, but it's focused on breaking down one movie in particular. And then Fewer Casts is a weekly or semi-weekly at this point, where we just talk about sort of the news for the week, any interesting articles we saw, any interesting trailers. Then we give a recommendation, something we watched that week or from whenever, quite frankly, if we didn't watch anything good that week. But, not reinventing the wheel, just a bunch of us sitting around talking about movies.
Yeah, they have good movie opinions, so there you go. They know what they're talking about. Yeah.
And that's part of what keeps it interesting is that we all as most people do, I guess, but we come at it from our own point of view and perspective. So it's even when we agree, we don't always agree for the same reasons, so it sparks a lot of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So how often are you on the bigger dives these days?
How often am I personally, or just the show?
No, you.
There's no set schedule. It's really more a question of Ed'll give us, he'll shoot us a text. Here's what I got coming up that I want to record in the next couple of weeks. And it's really just a matter of if it's a movie that I think I have something to add to the conversation. Sometimes it's even movies that I like, but I'm just like, I love that movie, but I don't. Everything that I would have to say about it's already been said. So there's really no point in me sitting in on that one. So it's really just if it's a movie, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a movie that I like or love. Although, we've talked about this before. I kind of follow the same philosophy you do, where I don't try to trash a bunch of stuff, at least not publicly. Like, if you're sitting with me in the living room, I'll tell you why I think a movie's a piece of shit. But
right.
To go on Twitter or on a podcast and really just rip a movie apart, as fun as that can be, like you, I feel like that might be a movie that somebody really digs, and I don't want to shit all over it, so I try to avoid doing it for that reason. So it's more focused on movies that I really like and have something to add to the conversation is really all it boils down to.
Well, I think that actually leads perfectly into the movie we're going to talk about, because you don't see a lot of podcasts covering this one. So I definitely don't think everything has been said about it, because it's just not covered widely enough. And we're going to be talking about Larry Clark's Bully. All right, Justin. So when did you first see this?
It was on cable. I remember the scene that I turned it on, it was already about 20, 25 minutes into it. So I remember exactly where I turned it on. It's a movie I'd heard about. I was aware of Larry Clark because of Kids, of course. And Another Day in Paradise, I'd seen at that point. That's a movie I need to see again. I've only seen it once and really didn't have an opinion about it one way or another, but I'd like to go back and rewatch it. Kids is a movie that I like. I don't love the way some people do. I don't know. I just never connected with that movie. But Bully, I'd been hearing about it, reading about it. It kind of came and went in the theaters pretty quickly. And then just flipping around cable one day, and it happened to be, like I said, about 20, 25 minutes into it. I was like, I'll turn it on. I'll probably get bored after a few minutes and give up on it. and was just kind of like immediately drawn in, even coming into it, not from the beginning, just the visual aspect of it just drew me in immediately. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, a year, maybe two after the theatrical release, it kind of, like I said, it came and went pretty quickly. And so yeah, whenever it was first on cable.
Yeah, so I didn't even know it had a theatrical release. I don't remember hearing about it, but yeah, I definitely caught it probably on like HBO or something. Same
Right.
way I caught Kids, actually. For some reason, I don't know why, when I was like 11 years old, I watched Kids a bunch. Like it would be on HBO or Cinemax, one of them, a bunch. And like Kids would be on during the day, which is not a movie, not a time for that movie to really be on. But during the summers, it would be on when I was at my dad's, and he had it, and I watched that one a bunch. And yeah, like I said, I caught this one on HBO as well, just like you, at least somewhere around there.
If I was a little, see, I'm a little bit older. Well, I'm probably a lot older than you actually, but if I was your age and, if I had seen Kids when I was 11 or even a teenager, that movie would have blew my mind. Like, like, holy, like the way, that's the way a lot of people feel about it. But like, I was already in my 20s at that point and living a pretty wild life myself. So I was like, I don't see what's so shocking about this movie. Like now as a parent, I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, I guess that was pretty shocking. But yeah, I think just because I was a little bit older than the kids involved, it was just like not old enough to be like, oh my God, what are they doing? Just just a little bit older. I was like, it's not crazy. So
no, at 11,
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy for me. Yeah, a few years ago, I did a different podcast where we took turns introducing each other to movies, and I introduced my co-host to Kids.
Did they thank you?
Well, we're both older. Now, he didn't have kids. I have kids, so I was rewatching for the first time as a parent, and I was like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I don't even want to think about this. Like, it's one of those movies, and after it, people could tell that we were uncomfortable even like discussing it. And they were like, go do Requiem for a Dream. And I was, and I get it. I had seen that, but here's the thing. We've all been kids, and I have kids. I've never been with drugs like that. So Requiem for a Dream did not make me uncomfortable as Kids does, because I don't have that life experience with it.
Right.
So
yeah, but both disturbing movies in their own way.
Yes, very much so. But back to Bully. For anyone that doesn't know, why don't you tell everyone what Bully is about?
So it's set in Florida. It's a couple of kids living in, I would say, this like the Florida suburbs. Marty and oh shit, what's the bully's name? Bobby. Marty and Bobby. And they're friends. They've been friends since they were infants, it's said at one point. And but Bobby's always like, he's the bully of the title. So I was gonna say picking on Marty, but it's way beyond picking at, like he physically like abuses this kid, constantly puts him down. He just plays mental games with him. So he just torments him. And Marty ends up meeting this girl, and they become boyfriend and girlfriend. And she sees the way Marty or the way Bobby treats Marty. She's on the brunt of Bobby's, whatever his sociopathy. She gets it sometimes from him too. And she just kind of gets fed up with it one day and just, asks Marty why he allows Bobby to treat him this way. And Marty kind of breaks down and explains their history. And Lisa suggests that they kill him. Like that, that's the only way to get rid of him. And Marty's kind of taken it back at first, but the more he thinks about it, he thinks it makes sense. So the rest of the movie is basically, they recruit a handful of their friends and put this plan together to kill this kid. And I guess we're going to get into it. Should I say spoilers at this point?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we can spoil this one. Normally I stay away from, but
okay, so I don't have to. I can. I just, is that important? Yeah, I guess we can talk around it. Let's talk around it. And if we absolutely can't, then we'll throw a spoiler alert up, I guess.
Yeah, well, like I said, normally I don't spoil it. So how familiar were you with these people? Like say Brad Renfro, Nick Stahl.
Brad Renfro, I still have never seen Apt Pupil, but I knew the name and I knew of him from that. Nick Stahl, this was before Terminator 3. Yep. So I don't know that this could be his first movie for all I know. I'm not sure.
No, I can tell you one. No, it's not.
It was something.
I know one, like Brad Renfro, I knew because I'm not mistaken. I've seen Apt Pupil, but it was since then. But I knew him from The Client with Susan Sarandon.
That's right, yeah. And I've never seen that either, but that's right. He was in that too, yeah.
And Nick Stahl, for some reason, when I was a kid, there was another movie I watched a lot, and it was him with Mel Gibson and The Man Without a Face.
Okay, he was in that. Another movie I haven't seen. We're throwing out all the ones that I've never seen these guys' other work, apparently. So
yeah, but yeah, this was 2 years before Terminator and like 4 years before Sin City. So
yeah, which is probably the only two other things I've ever seen him in. I can't remember seeing him in anything other than those movies. I know he's been in other stuff. Yeah, I'm just not sure that I've seen it.
I don't think I have either, other than Man Without a Face. So yeah, I know he's in that Carnival or whatever. I didn't watch that show.
I never watched that.
I didn't either.
But yeah, no, the only one that I might have been somewhat familiar with was Bijou Phillips.
Okay.
And I don't know if I saw her in anything or she was just one of those kids that was kind of in the tabloids because she had like wild sisters and her dad was a rock star. So she kind of, I think she's somebody I had heard of before I even knew what she did exactly. So I think she's probably the only one that I knew, I think, out of the entire, or then the kid that played Telly and Kids.
I was going to say, you knew one more at least.
Yeah.
Kids. I knew the kids.
And I didn't realize that was him at first. I was like, where do I know this kid from? And then I realized it was from Kids.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to grow up and be that big, to be honest. Yeah. I didn't expect that. I thought he would have been a scrawny thing his whole life.
Right.
All right, so let's see how you decide to do this. Well, let me ask you this. How much do you know about the true story behind this? Because I honestly don't know anything, but it's based off one.
Yeah, I don't know the story at all.
Okay.
And I never had any desire all the other times I've watched this movie to read the book, but for some reason I rewatched it last night, and for some reason after I watched it, I was like, I kind of want to read the book that this is based on. I found it that interesting to go back and learn a little bit more about the real story.
Yeah, because I'm the same as you. I'd never had the interest, and now I'm kind of at least intrigued by it to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see how much has been embellished, so see,
right?
Because it's a crazy story to be true. It's a crazy story.
Yeah,
fits nicely in that Florida crime genre.
Right? Yeah, it does.
All right, so we'll see how you go about this one, and that's if this movie does not lend itself to it at all. What I like to talk about, how do you do a sequel to this movie? But
I mean, the only possible way you could do any sequel is, I guess, you follow their lives in jail. What else?
Yeah.
Or I guess sorry, spoiler alert.
Right. Yeah. They don't it ends with that where they tell what everybody got at the end. So
right.
Yeah, that's really all you could do. This is not one that lends itself to that at all.
Yeah, nor would this story it's perfect. It tells exactly everything it needs to within, like an hour and 40 minutes or whatever the runtime is.
Yeah. It's a fun question I like to ask, but some movies just do not lend themselves to the question at all.
Yeah.
But it's been over 20 years, and what could happen is the modern day remake.
Oh boy.
So let's see where you're going to go with that.
I had a hard time with this one, mostly because I'm a little out of it with a lot of new stuff. There's just so much new stuff. And I'm just, like I said, I'm an older guy. I prefer older stuff at this point in my life. I don't keep up on new stuff quite as much. So I don't know a lot of young actors at this point. So it was difficult, but I patched a little list together. So for Marty, I went, and I'm going to butcher this kid's name, Armin Nahapetian, and he plays the young Beau in Beau is Afraid.
Okay, I've not seen that yet, but just a funny story about Beau is Afraid. I remember when they first released an actual image of all of them at the press, and like everybody was like, "Oh, I thought that was just CGI Joaquin Phoenix."
That poor kid. Yeah, he's got a weird look, so they got to take some of the gloss down. He's very
Right.
glossy.
But okay, I know who you're talking about now. I didn't know him by the name, but yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, I could just see him getting bullied and kind of having enough of it after a while. For Bobby, and this one I had a tough time. So I went with Gabriel LaBelle, who was played Sammy Fableman in the
Okay.
Fablemans. I don't know why. I was just looking at him, looking at stills of him today when trying to put this together. I'm like, I don't know. I can kind of see him in the Bobby role. See a little bit of darkness there, even though Sammy Fableman was not a dark character.
Right.
So yeah, and like the more I look at it, like I took a few of them from the Fablemans. It's weird. There are a lot of young people in that movie. For Lisa, and man, I hate to do this because Rachel Miner's performance as Lisa in Bully is like one of my all-time favorite performances. I just love what she does in that movie. And rewatching it last night, I realized everybody in the movie who has a speaking role has like at least one, if not more, moment where they're just absolutely like perfectly real. Like it just feels like you're watching a documentary, or you know what I mean? Like they just nail it. So everybody in the movies, I love all the performances. But I'm sorry, Rachel Miner's performance, like I said. So to play her role, I went with this actor named Anna Cobb. She was in that movie We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Heard
Have you
of
ever
it,
heard
haven't
of
seen. I've heard of it, but I have not seen it.
It's good. Like I went in thinking it just the stuff I was seeing and reading about. I thought it was a horror movie, and it's not at all. In fact, it would play as I think a good double feature with Bully because it just kind of features like sort of outsiderish kids who are just trying to deal with like, you know, on the surface it looks like they have it all. Like everybody in Kids has a nice house. The girl in this We're All Going to the World's Fair has a nice house. So you'd think that they have a good life, but there's just something in their boredom that like is dangerous, like in Bully, the way it plays out.
Right.
And there's an aspect of that to the We're All Going to the World's Fair. So I like just kind of got, if she's going to be anybody in this movie, it would be a Lisa vibe because Lisa was sort of awkward, and this girl played that well. She was all. Did you see Bones and All? She's also in that.
No, I did not.
Okay, it's a small role in that.
Okay.
So yeah, Anna Cobb is Lisa. So this one I had a hard time with. Well, I'll come back to this one. So there's an actress that was again in the Fablemans named Isabel Koosman. I kind of saw her as Allie, the Bijou Phillips character. Allie, even though she was as immature as everybody else, she gave off this air of being a little bit older than everybody and just kind of having her shit together a little bit more, but she was as much a mess as everybody else. And I don't know, I got a vibe from this actress that she could do that. So her as Allie, and then for cousin Derek, Lisa's cousin, I went with Cooper Hoffman, Philip Seymour Hoffman's son that was in Licorice Pizza.
Okay.
Similar builds, just kind of like big, oafy kids. He might be a little old for the part, but I don't know if they specified that Derek was in high school. Derek might have been a year or two older than the kids. I can't quite remember.
I can't remember that part either. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just got a Cooper Hoffman vibe. For Donnie, who was played by Michael Pitt, I went with Jack Champion, who played Spider in the new Avatar movie. Have you seen that? No interest in the Avatar movies. I could see him playing kind of a dopey, Donnie was kind of a dopey kid, but had moments of clarity, moments of intelligence. And the Spider was kind of that role in Avatar, similar aspects. Okay, so for the one I had a hard time with, I don't know why this is the name that popped into my head, and she's too young for the role. So this is why I had a hard time with it. But let's say in 4 or 5 years, I had Julia Butters as Heather, the girl they pick up in rehab.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I just could Julia Butters is a great actor so far. Like I really like what she, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yep.
she was the little girl, and she was again the Fableman. She was one of the Sammy Fableman sisters, and she was really good in that. She's really good at what she does. So yeah, she wouldn't be appropriate for this role at this time in her life. A little too young. But like I said, 5 years, 5, 6 years, I could see her doing it. And then as the Hitman, I don't know why this is the name that kept coming into my head, but I went with Timothy Chalamet.
Oh no.
Just because the Hitman, like everybody thinks he's like, he's a little bit older. They think he's like, they believe he's a hitman, kind of cool in some way, but he's really kind of geeky. And he's not a huge guy, and I could just see Timothy Chalamet pulling that off for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just kept picturing him in the role.
Yeah, you get a little Bones and All reunion there with you.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't even think of that. Yep.
Okay, well, so let me ask this, and it's something I typically ask, but Larry Clark's a very certain type of director. Do you have anybody that could direct a movie like this, or see this type of movie being made? Like you said, this got released
for a
theatrically.
remake?
Yeah.
Who would do it? Yeah, I mean, I could see there's some people I could see doing it. As far as, man, that's a really good question. I never thought about it.
Yeah, I normally don't ask the director, but with the Larry
right,
Clark
yeah,
flick,
threw me off with me, threw me a curveball. I mean, I don't think it would necessarily look the way Larry Clark does. Larry Clark started out as a photographer, so that's sort of his background more than storytelling. And I think the reason I like this best of all of his movies, I mean, besides, I just think it just is the best made of all of his movies, at least the ones I've seen, is I think this is a better script. The two scripts that Harmony Korine wrote, I don't think either one of those are great scripts. He also wrote Ken Park. Ken Park, which is a movie I just rewatched last week, and I'm just not a big fan of that movie. But Larry Clark had a really good script for this, and then with his distinct visual style, I think it turned out to be a masterpiece. So, yeah, there's a bunch of people that could do it, and it would turn out differently. But I don't think anybody could do it quite the way he did it. There's a lot of people now that sort of do that, a gritty looking independent movie that people like Larry Clark and Harmony Korine with Gummo. Some of the Dogma people like Lars von Trier, like, there's some filmmakers that kind of perfected that look in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And now a lot of independent films, if they want a sort of gritty feel to them, it's almost like a cliche at this point,
Yeah, I understand that. Not like I said, I knew I was throwing a curveball by throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I would have given it more thought. That's a good question.
All right, so let's do this. Let's have you do one final pitch on why someone should take a chance and watch Bully.
Well, like I said, it's beautiful. It's beautiful looking. Just if you're a fan of the way movies are photographed, the way that I am, then yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Like I said, it's an interesting script. The performances, every performance is fantastic. Great soundtrack. We didn't talk about the soundtrack. It's another one I own. When I was on here last time, I did The Last Dragon, which is I also own that soundtrack. So I think every time, if you're gracious enough to have me on again, I'll have to pick another movie where I also own the soundtrack. Just make that the theme. But yeah, it's just one of those movies where all the elements come together. There's the only thing I can pick apart about it, and this is true if you know Larry Clark, it's true in all of his movies. He seems to have a weird, creepy fixation with teenagers and teenage bodies. And so there are certain shots where it's just like Bijou Phillips' crotch and short shorts. And it doesn't need to be there. Like, it's not enhancing the scene. It's not imparting any information. It's just exploitative. And like he does that a few times throughout the movie with a few of the different. Actually, you could probably make an argument of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten how much nudity and sex was in it. I knew there was some, but I forgot. It's nearly constant. So I forgot about that part of it.
Yeah, that was something I thought. I was like, Man, when I was a teenager, I did not just hang around fully naked as often as these kids do.
Yeah, it was just I forgot. Yeah, it was like, whoa, it's a lot of it. So, if that sort of thing bothers you, then this is probably not the movie for you. But if you don't care, it's just. But yeah, okay. So that's the part I was saying with Larry Clark. That's my only negative is that he borders on creepy. This isn't a creepy movie. I don't want to say that, but there are like a few quick, like 1 or 2 second shots that border on creepy. So, but other than that, it's to me a nearly perfect movie. I think it's a masterpiece.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. You say masterpiece, bam. There you go. That's why it's on favorite movie. Boom. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you online, where they can find the podcast, and we'll get out of here.
I'm always bad with this. I should write this stuff down before I do it. But so Film Effect Podcast on Twitter. I don't do Facebook or TikTok, but I think we have pages on both of those. Me personally, okay, so it's Kundalini Hand 73. So CUNDALINI, right? Did I spell it right? Kundalini Hand HAND 73. It's when I logged, and you told me I can switch it, right? Then weren't you the one who told me that? Yeah, once I went with that handle, I was stuck with it. But I'm happy to find out that I can change that to something more rational. It was I knew going into it, my focus was going to be movies on Twitter and not anything else really. So I went with a movie reference, and that was the first one. I'm a big Mad Max fan, so that was the first one that popped to mind.
Hey, that, and you haven't even brought Mad Max to the table.
I thought about it last time. I was like, but see, if I was going to talk about a Mad Max movie, it wouldn't be Mad Max. It would be The Road Warrior. That's my favorite one.
Okay. Well, hey, I've done Beverly Hills Cop Part 2, but not the first one. So look, I've done that. We jumped straight to the sequel before. And in terms when we get to sequel territory, that's when we get to talk about the first and the rest of them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, see, you can jump around and bring the second one of the series. That works. We'll make it work. No big deal. But as always, you can follow the show at YNF Movie Pod, most active on Twitter. I think I have an Instagram and a TikTok that I do not even log into anymore, so I wouldn't worry about those. So yeah, I would just say follow linktr.ee/YNF Movie Pod. That way you can at least find my letterbox. That way you can see what I'm watching that's not being covered on the show. And we'll probably be back next week with another Film Effect member. I don't know. It's the first one I'm recording, so we'll see how they decide to go in order. But until then, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you next time.